Master?
Intense, intelligent, ruthless, and complex. Just a few terms that I feel best capture and describe possibly one of the best antagonists that could have been written for the series.
That's a bold statement.
And we see the threats escalate over the seasons as our heroes evolve with them, but this is truly the most compelling of the lot to come from a Force user. This week focuses on the legacy of the Jedi and quite frankly how the remnants are self-imploding in some ways, as we see with both Kanan and Ezra's relationship at the start of this, and the fact that they're equally being destroyed by the looming threat of Darth Vader's hunters, the Inquisitors. I'll dig into this a little deeper following the breakdown of the episode, but like last week, it establishes a fuck ton of spinning plates for the season. But once I've explained what happens, I hope that you won't think I'm exaggerating when I say that this episode is in my top 10 Rebels installments. We kick off this one with Ezra attempting to balance himself physically and spiritually on top of the Ghost whilst in flight.
Excuse me, the fuck did you just say?
Are we certain Order 66 was even fucking necessary when these are the methods being applied to training for a Jedi learner?
No, he's got a point.
Anyway, as this rather precarious activity continues, Chopper and Zeb persist in berating and teasing Ezra over his performance issues. And Chopper goes a step too far and weaponizes milk cartons, originally intended for target practice, and pelts them at Ezra, who, from this, loses his balance and topples off the Ghost.
That's a stupid decision. That can only be made by a stupid idiot.
Leading to an emergency pickup from Hera, Kanan and Zeb, where after this, Kanan scolds Ezra for not focusing on the situation and allowing that to happen. As they enter the central hub of the ship, Sabine is tuned into the local reports and Zeb's liberation of a TIE fighter comes back to haunt him from last week, but is twisted to sound like an assault on the people of the Thal.
You dick!
When suddenly the transmission is cut off by a member of the Imperial Senate, Gall Trayvus, who's speaking out against the unjust occupation across the galaxy. And it's here where the group discover that Jedi Master Luminara Unduli is reportedly alive and being held in the Stygeon system. Kanan gears up with the crew to go and retrieve her, but Ezra's resistant to this, confessing to Chopper that he's not comfortable being pawned off with another master. Once they arrive, the crew impressively sneak in through a side door, and Kanan and Ezra find their way to Luminara's cell, where she seems rather peculiar in her response to their arrival, when we find out that it was in fact a hologram and she is unfortunately dead.
Well, that's fucking not good.
With this being established as a trap for any Jedi looking to save their own, and it's here where the Grand Inquisitor makes his full debut, and Kanan engages him in a chilling duel where he pries into Kanan's past, recognizing his forms and even deduces who his master was to throw him off. Where after a bit of back and forth, he becomes rather confident in this moment and Kanan gets the upper hand on him, allowing for both he and Ezra to escape. The Jedi catch up with Zeb and Sabine, and after a narrow escape, Kanan informs Hera of what they found and he says that Ezra's stuck with him for now. Once they return to Lothal, Ezra confesses his annoyance with Kanan for wanting to give him up, to which Kanan makes it clear that that was never his intention but that he wanted the best for him, as Kanan's training was limited due to the war ending when it did, but Ezra says that he wants him as his teacher, to which Kanan supports and they agree to continue Ezra's training. Now, I think we can all agree that Rebels has three core villains, with an abundance of supporting threats to keep our crew on their toes, but our eyes and thoughts inevitably align with Grand Admiral Thrawn, Darth Vader, and our fallen guardsman, the Grand Inquisitor. So, pay attention class, a quick history lesson for you. TGI Fridays over here is a character whose history is shrouded in mystery, with his earliest known appearance being involved in Ahsoka's trial in the Clone Wars' 5th season, as one of the Temple Guards to assist Anakin in capturing Barriss Offee after she framed Ahsoka for murder and turned against the Jedi and the Republic. After this, his next chronological appearance would be in the Charles Soule Vader comics that showed Palps and Vader establishing the Inquisitor program, that brought him in as their leader, given he was one of the few fully trained Force users and lightsaber wielders that could strengthen the Inquisitor program. Now, I don't wish to spoil what becomes of the Grand Inquisitor here, but he is truly one of my favourite antagonists in Star Wars, as his ambition and desire for knowledge was his motivating factor. Not necessarily power or influence like most of the Inquisitors or Sith seek, just the ancient Jedi texts and archives. My guy just wants a book and takes pleasure in psychologically unpacking his adversaries.
I live for the simple things. Like how much this is gonna hurt. Yeah, right, little man.
His methods of torture extend to the fight as well, which was made very prominent here, showing the inexperience of Kanan, who was unravelled by his levels of deduction, and it was fascinating to see this play out. TGI Fridays proves to be a worthy contender throughout the course of the season as a precursor to Vader's eventual arrival, but if you're new to this show, I would implore you to enjoy him while he's here. Now, onto our force-wielding maniacs. This episode digs into the promise set up in the season premiere where Kanan attempts to teach Ezra. However, when things fall apart due to the reckless behaviour from Zeb and Chopper, I might add,
You stupid idiots!
Kanan chooses to blame Ezra for it going awry, as that likely was the attitude of his master Depa Billaba should any of his shortcomings impact what they were doing. To no one's surprise though, and a fact that TGI Fridays points out, is that Kanan is equally untrained and unfocused, which informs Ezra in that moment that they are perfect for each other. Kanan isn't destined to be a teacher at this point in his life, given his training was incomplete, so it's ironic that he says Ezra needs to understand patience, but struggles to adhere to that concept himself, meaning Ezra doesn't have a stable role model in which to understand what he's being instructed to do. They, in essence, have to teach each other from now on to evolve as both master and apprentice and become what Kanan keeps mentioning. I love the discussions between the pair in the closing minutes, as it helps to emphasise the familial bond as much as the legacy obligation here. But it informs us that Ezra's starting to trust these people, whereas before he was prepared to steal from them and think nothing of it. And Kanan's learning to access the Force once again after closing himself off to it for so long, which made him vulnerable to the Grand Inquisitor here. It's moments of evolution like this to his character from here onward that make Kanan one of the franchise's best written additions, as his arc is flawed, earnest, and essentially human for someone that possesses almost mystical abilities. It takes moments like this to build that resistance within him, but also the questionable judgments in retrospect too. I don't know if Kanan was aware of what transpired during the war with Ahsoka, but I don't see how Luminara teaching Ezra would have improved things. In my mind, it would have been a poor replacement, given she failed the Martez sisters by lacking the compassion to console them when the Jedi's pursuit of Zero cost them their family, and she claimed in that moment to them that perhaps it was the will of the Force of what happened.
You disrespectful, stupid idiot.
Then the failure of her apprentice Barriss Offee can't be specifically placed on her, but she was treated with apathy that was masked as a belief that attachment is a problem and corrupts the Jedi's path, which was even evidenced during the second battle of Geonosis, where Anakin was willing to lift every rock around him to find Ahsoka in the rubble, whereas Luminara was prepared to just leave Barriss there. Fascinatingly though, we know that Anakin's connection to Ahsoka proved to be the making of her, as we saw in Tales of the Jedi when he went the extra step to ensure that she could survive an onslaught of blaster fire, which would serve to protect her from Order 66, and partly leads into why Ahsoka is such an invaluable inclusion to Kanan and Ezra's lives next season, as a guiding light who was taught from love rather than strictly logic, a method in which Kanan is trying to exercise with Ezra, but it's failing as they need to approach the Jedi training in a different way now. The old methods aren't serving to protect the remaining Jedi anymore or benefit an orphan like Ezra. Not to rag on Luminara too much, but she's not my first thought of consideration when it comes to an effective teacher in this age, and I doubt she'd even risk exercising her use in the Force through fear of being found out by someone like Vader.
No, he's got a point.
I will admit though, it was pretty fucked up but entertaining to see the Inquisitor lure Jedi in with such a twisted method, and it makes me wonder how many other desperate victims fell in this trap. To keep the remnants there too would imply that the Grand Inquisitor has truly parted ways with his old life to comfortably look at that almost daily. As for the remainder of this episode and the other components involved, I want to hone in on the setups for future plot points, the first being Gall Trayvus, a gentleman who's being used to drag out rebels system by system and essentially acts as an informant for the Empire, and is later involved with our group, but is revealed to be a traitor and even confesses that Ezra's parents are dead, something of which is confirmed later to us, but for now is up for speculation, as Ezra believes and can feel it within himself that they are still alive, or rather wants to convince himself that they aren't truly gone.
Everybody's got dead people. It's no excuse to get everybody else dead along the way.
Then, on a minor level, Ezra's target practice manages to find its rhythm during the same episode, I believe, where they meet Gall Trayvus, where until then it is a point of contention that Kanan refuses to move past until Ezra understands it. And as for the Stygeon Prime system, the spire that Luminara's remains are held within was actually introduced in the Son of Dathomir series of comics from the Clone Wars, originally intended to be an arc in a future season of the show, where Maul was held prisoner following his fight against Palps and the loss of his brother Savage in Season 5. So, my assessment of this episode is it's a perfect introduction for the Grand Inquisitor that adds weight to the show that it desperately needed after 3 extremely light-hearted adventures with the group. And it kicks off a journey that you'll grow to adore between 2 young Jedis completely out of their elements. The humour was peak comedy for the show, Zeb and Chopper are dicks, the music was goosebump-inducing, and Hera is the true hero here of this week's installment, leading the charge against the Empire with horny manta rays. That's going to do it for this week though, everyone. Remember to leave a thumbs up, subscribe if you're new here and you like what you see, and until next time everyone, take care, and may the Force be with you.